Grab yourself a coffee and pull up a seat because today I'm going to teach you how to play The Hunger from Renegade Game Studios. I'm Mark Maya and this is Board Game Coffee. Vampires are awakening from their slumber, and their sights are set on the eternal rose that blooms in the labyrinth far beyond the castle, and they have until sunrise to pick this most beautiful bloom. Along the way they will hunt humans, seduce familiars, and increase their powers to become the most notorious vampire of them all. The Hunger is a deck-building game for 2 to 6 players that'll have you playing the roles of vampires running around the board, hunting humans, and improving your deck. The Hunger can be played in 2 modes, Rookie and Elder. For this video, I'll be going over the rules for Elder mode. If you're looking to jump to a particular section of this video, check out the index in the description below. Your goal in The Hunger is to venture out from the castle to earn as many points as possible and make it back to the castle, or at the very least, the cemetery, before the sun comes up. Because if you don't, your vampire is reduced to ash and your score to nothing. So, staying close to the castle and playing it safe seems like the obvious choice, right? Not if you want to win. You see, the best rewards always come with a little risk. The further you venture out from the castle, the more you stand to earn. Alright, with that said, let's get to the setup. Since we're playing in Elder mode, set the game board to its B side and place it in the center of the table with the hunt track to one side. Assemble the hunt track so there's one more row than the number of players. So for a 3-player game, we would need to build a hunt track with 4 rows, like this. Place any remaining hunt track pieces back in the box. Now, each player chooses a vampire and takes their matching starter deck of 6 cards. Your starting cards will have this gold border and a picture of your vampire here in the corner. Starting cards belonging to the vampires not being used should be returned to the box. You'll also need to collect your matching vampire token and score token. That you'll place on the 0 space of the score track. Next, find 3 roses and place them face up in the labyrinth. Shuffle the remaining hunt cards and place them face down near the hunt track to form the hunt deck. Now, shuffle the bonus tokens face down and place 1 on each of these chest spaces. Then return the remaining tokens to the box without looking at them. Flip over each of the tokens on these open chest spaces and leave the ones on the closed chests face down. Draw 3 cards from the top of the hunt deck and place them face down on the Tavern without looking at them. Place the moon token on the first space of the turn track. Then place a number of castle tokens near the castle based on the number of players. So if you're playing a 3-player game, stack the 3 highest valued tokens on the castle, with the highest value token on top and the lowest on the bottom. Now grab your mission tiles. If you're playing with less than 5 players, pull out all the missions with the 5+ indicated here and return them to the box. Select 2 random missions with this beige background and place them face up in these public mission spaces. If you're having trouble discerning the beige background from the gold, look for the word discard in the text. Discard is always associated with the gold background missions. Shuffle the remaining missions together, both gold and beige, and deal out 2 face down to each player. Players then secretly choose 1 to keep and discard the other back to the box. Next, place a number of missions face down on each of these crypt spaces equal to the number shown on that space, then place the remaining missions back in the box. Now, shuffle your deck of 6 starter cards and draw 3. For the first turn only, all players reveal their hand of 3 cards and calculate their speed point total. The player with the least amount of speed points will go first, followed by the player with the next lowest, and so on. Stack the player tokens so that the fastest player is on the bottom and the slowest player at the top. And remember, the slowest player, the one on the top, is the one that goes first. Now, the only thing left to do is prepare the hunt track by placing one face-up card in each slot of the number 3 row. Before we learn how to play, let's learn a little bit more about the cards we'll be playing with. Many of the cards in the Hunger share much of the same information, with a few exceptions. All the cards will have a speed value indicated here. Speed is used to move around the board and acquire cards from the hunt track. This icon here indicates the card's category, unless it's a starter card, in which case it indicates which player that card belongs to. A card's type is indicated here, and any victory points that card provides, if any, will be listed here and here. A card's name is indicated here, and below that you'll find the card's effect, if any. If the effect appears on a light background, like this one, it takes place when the card is in your play area. If the effect appears on a dark background, the effect takes place the moment this card is hunted. There are 4 basic types of cards in the Hunger. Power cards award you with powerful abilities that will strengthen your deck, but offer nothing in the way of points. Humans, on the other hand, are your primary source of points, and they come in 4 flavors: Villager, Religious, Military, and Noble. But hunting them will clog up your deck and slow you down. Not to mention their negative effects could really drive a stake through your plans. Familiars are helpful creatures that stay in your play area and offer you a variety of benefits. Roses are powerful items that not only award you points when picked, but they stay in your play area and continue to award you points. How much and how often will depend on which rose you pick. The Hunger is played in turns, and on your turn you'll play all the cards in your hand and resolve all their effects. But the order you resolve those effects is completely up to you. Every turn after the first, player order is determined by your vampire's place on the board, which region they're in. Vampires in the forest play first, followed by vampires in the plains, which also includes this waterway here. Then players in the mountain region take their turn, followed lastly by players in the cemetery. So it basically boils down to the player furthest from the castle goes first. If there are multiple vampires in a single region, then the player order in that region is determined by the path they are on. Vampires on the road will play first, then vampires on the railroad, and finally vampires on the boat path. If there are multiple players in the same region and on the same path, then the player furthest from the castle goes first. If the vampires are stacked, then the vampire on top will be the first to go. Once you've taken your turn and done all you're going to do, flip your vampire token over to its inactive side to indicate your turn is done. Then play passes to the next player furthest from the castle. When your turn comes up, you must play all the cards from your hand and resolve each of them completely, one at a time in whichever order you choose, with a few restrictions. The first thing you need to do before anything else is resolve all your discard and draw effects, which are indicated by these icons here. But you can choose which order they take place. Discarding a card means to place one of the cards you just played into your discard pile. Once a card is discarded, you no longer gain any of its effects, whether they be negative or positive. It's as if the card was never played. When selecting which card to discard, it has to be a card that you have not activated. When a card tells you to draw a card, take it from the top of your deck, put it directly into your play area, and resolve it normally. Many card effects will require that you have a human in your play area to activate. Like this Vampiric Strength Power card, which lets you draw 2 cards instead of 1 if you have a human in your play area. Abilities like this only trigger once, regardless of how many humans you have in your play area. If you have multiple cards in play that require a human, they can all trigger off the same human. There are a wide variety of card effects that I won't be covering in this video, but you can find a full list of card effects on the back of the rulebook. Although I would like to take a second to talk about permanent cards. Permanent cards stay in your play area after you've played them and grant you benefits every turn. They can be identified by this permanent keyword listed here in bold. Okay, so once you've done all your drawing and discarding, calculate the total speed value of all the cards remaining in your play area, including any permanent cards you might have in play. And I'd like to point out that although some cards have a negative speed value, your speed total can never drop below 0. Speed points are used to move and hunt, but you don't have to use all of them or any if you don't want to. If you're going to move on your turn, which you most likely will if you can, then it needs to be the first thing you do after calculating your speed points. Because once you do anything else, such as hunting or activating a board effect of a space you landed on, you can no longer move for the rest of the turn. Now, unless a card says otherwise, you are never forced to move. But if you don't move, you do not gain the benefits of the space you're currently on. Each speed point you spend will allow you to move one space along the path you're on. You don't have to spend all your speed points when you move, but when you do move, you can only go in one direction. You can't move forward and then back again. If you ever come across one of these crossroads, you can change the path you're traveling. If you ever end your movement on a space with one or more other vampires, you have the option of pushing them to an adjacent space. If there's more than one vampire to push, start with the one on top and work your way down. When doing this, you don't have to push them into the same space. The only time you can't push a vampire is if they're in the cemetery or the castle. If you end your movement on a space with one of these board effects, you may trigger that effect. Let's take a look at some of those effects. The castle is where you start the game, and it's where you'll try to return before the game is over. Players who manage to make it back to the castle will take points off this stack in the order they arrive. So the first player to return to the castle will earn 10 points. The second will earn 6, and so on. But be warned, once you do return to the castle, you can't ever leave. When you end your turn on one of these chess spaces with a token, take the token, earn 2 points, and add it to your player board effect side up. You can use these tokens anytime during your turn. When you do, flip it over to show that you've used it. Once used, it can't be used ever again. You can find a list of what each token does on the back of the rulebook. Locations like the market, church, mansion, and barracks allow you to digest one human card of the type matching that location. So, for example, while at the barracks, I could digest one human of this military type. Anytime an effect asks you to digest a card, the card you digest can come from your discard pile or play area. Once digested, the card is placed here under your character board. Digested cards still count for end-of-game scoring, but they no longer get shuffled in with the rest of your cards and clog up your deck. When you land on these crypt spaces, take all the mission tiles, read them over, and return all but one of them. You also have the option to replace the missions from the crypt with any number of your previously unused missions. So if you want to, you could take these 4 new missions, keep them all, and return 3 of your previously unused missions to the crypt. Or a combination of these missions. It's completely up to you. But what are missions? Well, there are 2 different types of missions. There are those that will earn you points at the end of the game based on your actions or cards you've collected, and others that you discard on your turn for powerful one-time effects. But whichever mission type you have, make sure to keep it your little secret until it comes time to use it. Okay, so at this point we've spent some speed points to move around the board and maybe even triggered a board effect. Now what? Well, if you have any speed points remaining after you've moved, you can go hunting. Hunting is how players build up their deck and earn points by essentially purchasing cards from the hunt track. On your turn, you can only hunt once unless a special card effect tells you otherwise. To hunt, choose one card or pile of cards on a single space of the hunt track. The cost of taking the cards in that space is listed here. So it'll cost you 3 speed points to hunt in any space in this column, 2 speed points to hunt a space in the second column, and 1 speed point to hunt a space in this column. When you hunt, you must take all the cards in that space and add them to your discard pile. Cards with the ready keyword in bold are the exception. When you hunt one of these cards, you have the option of placing it on top of your deck rather than in your discard pile. You can hunt from pretty much any space on the board with the exception of the castle, cemetery, and these ship spaces. But on the other hand, you will have additional hunting options while at the Tavern, Labryinth, and any of these well spaces. Except for this one here on the castle, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Players who have their vampires on this Tavern space also have the option to hunt all the cards at that location for 2 speed points rather than hunting on the hunt track. Anyone who makes it all the way to the Labryinth can choose to take any one of the 3 eternal roses that grow there. Now, you can't take all of the roses, just one. Roses are free to take and are scored immediately. But keep in mind that taking a rose counts as your hunt action for that turn. So you won't be able to hunt on the hunt track if you take a rose. Same goes for the Tavern. If you hunt there, you can't hunt on the hunt track. You'll also notice that roses have this ready keyword that allows you to place this card on top of your deck rather than in your discard pile when hunted. You'll also find the keywords unique, which means you can't have more than 1 card of that type in your deck. And permanent, which indicates that the card stays in play once you play it. While on a well space, you have the option of hunting twice, but your second hunt must be from the 1-cost column. The well at the castle is the exception to this rule, because you can't hunt while your vampire is on the castle space. So if you can't hunt while at the castle, why is there a well? Well, some effects, like this spicy and mist effect, use wells as part of the resolution. And when they trigger, you'll be glad that a well is there. Each time you hunt a human, either by itself or as part of a pile of cards, you will instantly score the points listed here and possibly earn some bonus points depending on the region you hunted them in. Any human you hunt while in the Plains region will earn you 1 additional bonus point. And humans hunted in the Forest region will earn you 2 additional bonus points. If the human you hunt has this X in place of a number value, it'll have an effect listed here that you'll score at the end of the game. Until then, it's considered a value of 0. Once you're done hunting, any speed points you have remaining are lost. They don't carry over to the next turn. Once your turn is over, flip your token to its inactive side. Then discard all the cards other than permanent cards that are in your play area. If you have any cards with an end of turn effect, like this Eternal Rose that awards you 1 point, activate it now. Lastly, draw 3 cards from your deck. If you ever need to draw a card and can't, shuffle your discard pile and place it face down, creating a new deck. Then finish drawing cards. Once that's done, your turn is over and play passes to the next player. But if all vampires are inactive because you were the last to play, it's time to prep for the next turn. After all players have had their turn, move the moon token over 1 space, unless it's already on the last space, in which case the game is over. But let's assume it's not. Next, flip all vampire tokens over to their active side. Then move all remaining cards on the hunt track 1 space to the right. Any cards in the last space stay where they are, and any cards moving into that space will be included in that stack. Fill all empty spaces in the 3 column with a card from the top of the hunt deck. And lastly, if there are less than 3 cards on the Tavern space and no vampires in that space, add 1 card from the hunt deck to the Tavern. If the moon token is on the 15th space when it comes time to move it at the end of the turn, dawn has come and the game is over. Possibly. Players that have collected a parasol token will get to play 1 last turn without hunting. And just to clarify, having more than 1 parasol does not get you more than 1 turn. Once all players with a parasol have taken their extra turn, we move on to final scoring. Okay, first things first. Any vampires who have not made it into the cemetery or castle are caught out in the sun and burnt to ash. So, no points for you. Vampires who make it into the cemetery manage to take cover in a vault to avoid the sun, but this narrow escape will lose you 5 points. And for those lucky few who make it back to the castle, not only do you get to keep all your points, but you get to take the top token of this stack and earn the points depicted. The first player to reach the castle earns 10 points, the second 6, and so on. Okay, so for those of you who survived the coming of dawn, it's time to add up your points. First, calculate your card bonuses, which might look something like this Nemesis card that awards you points for every religious human that you've hunted. Next, each player scores the points shown on the public missions if they have met the mission's requirements. Then, each player reveals their own mission and scores those. If any mission has a majority requirement, you need to have more than each other vampire, and not equal to any of them. If you score 100 victory points, flip your score token over to the 100 side and start over from 0. Once all the scoring is done, the vampire with the most points wins. If you're tied, then the player who makes it to the castle first wins. If no one makes it to the castle, then the vampire closest to the castle wins. And that's it. I hope this video helps, and I hope you enjoy playing The Hunger. See you next week. Thanks for joining us. If you like this video and you want to see more, subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to keep up to date with everything we do here at Board Game Coffee. But if you want to see more right now, we got plenty of videos to choose from. And if that's not enough, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Mark Maya, and this is Board Game Coffee. And remember, have fun, keep gaming, be social. See you next week.